Listen to this. The Justice Department is now investigating a Democratic consulting firm linked to Hunter Biden for potential illegal lobbying. This is according to a new Politico report.
Per the report, the firm in question, Blue Star Strategies, took on the Ukrainian energy company Burisma as a client while the president's son was on the board. And when they talk about illegal lobbying, that it's a bit of a misnomer in the sense that the lobbying itself isn't what's illegal. We allow all sorts of lobbying here in the United States of America. What would be illegal is if they were engaging in lobbying activities without registering those activities, because the laws for domestic companies are, they do require some transparency. Every 3 months, you have to file your, how much you spent lobbying and what issues you lobbied on and which lobbyists did the lobbying. But for what they call FARA, Foreign Agent Registration Act, it's much more onerous. So you have to, if you send a press release out, you have to tell everybody that you sent the press release out to. And so a lot of lobbyists try to evade registering, and you can often get away with it. But if they crack down on it, it's an actual crime that prosecutors take seriously. It's
a felony, and we've seen this hit people like Paul Manafort and Tony Podesta. Actually, you can find some really crazy stuff just scrolling through the FARA database. Seriously, if you ever have time, take a moment to do it. It's definitely sort of a bureaucratic mess and hard to understand and sift through. But a lot of times what happens, as Ryan said, is that they evade the disclosure, or they disclose and they don't disclose what they did fully enough, because technically all those press releases, all of those meetings on Capitol Hill, you're supposed to disclose. And what we saw people like Paul Manafort and Tony Podesta get caught up in a couple of years ago is they disclosed those things belatedly. Allegedly, it was a mistake, right? Don't look, it was all a mistake. But this is actually a really serious issue because FARA is a World War II era regulation that sprung forth so that we know which foreign governments are influencing who. We're not banning it. It's not illegal to do that lobbying. We just want to know what's going on. And I think this case study with Hunter Biden, these links are actually important for us to know, especially when we're talking about the United States' relationship with Burisma and how all of those negotiations in Ukraine unfolded. This is important stuff to know, and this is a great case study of exactly why we should know what's happening behind those closed doors.
And it also gives context to the hiring in the first place of Hunter Biden.
Yes.
Nobody suggests that he's some natural gas expert or expert in the geopolitics of the region. And the fact that if this report is true, that they were doing lobbying in the United States, so they'd hired a firm to lobby, that just kind of buttresses the suggestion that, well, the purpose of Hunter Biden being on the board was to gain influence with the United States, not even necessarily with Joe Biden in particular. That would certainly help, but just having the name Biden, on the board, that sends a signal not just to their Ukrainian counterparts, but in Washington D.C. Like say, look, we're not just some mobbed up corrupt gas firm. We have links to American officials that you're familiar with, and so and it also implicates our entire geopolitics. Like the idea that a gas company in Ukraine even has to take up the influence peddling in Washington raises the question of why.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Why? But because we're an empire is the answer.
And so Politico's report has a great sentence in it. The existence of the investigation into Blue Star, meanwhile, shows that DOJ's torqued up enforcement efforts may also create legal jeopardy for firms and operatives aligned with the Democratic Party. This is something that, again, we saw with the Manafort and Podesta lobbying. It's that suddenly all of these other people were implicated. Mercury Public Affairs, a huge lobbying firm in D.C. and in New York and all over the world, was implicated in that. The Podesta Group was one of the most powerful lobbying firms in the country and the world, was implicated in that. And all different people had their hands on this issue on both sides of the aisle. But it's the Democrats that somehow, because the media is overly friendly to them, we talk so much more about Paul Manafort than we do about the Podesta Group and Tony Podesta. But that's, again, this Hunter Biden issue is creating, as this political sentence suggests, a real problem for Democrats because it's going to end up pulling back the veil on exactly how involved in some of this like Eastern European lobbying they are.
Right. And there are some lobbying firms that are fly by night, and there are some lobbying firms that follow the letter of the law more precisely. But ultimately in the swamp, there's no good side and bad side. And so to the extent that Democrats tie themselves to it, they're going to be implicated and get mud on them when this stuff arises, which is why just from a purely pragmatic political perspective, it would be wiser for them to separate themselves from the kind of corporate lobbying wing of the party, rely on small donors, rely on regular people, and then just bash the other party as the party of the swamp, the one that relies on corporate money and billionaire money. And the last couple of cycles have shown that we're at a place that is sustainable. You know, if you get people fired up enough, there is enough money in tens and $20s and $30 increments to fund a national political party, particularly as the suburbs have been drifting more towards Democrats. A lot of the people who got super engaged on behalf of Democrats against Trump in 2017, the so-called resistance, they can give more than just $27. They're giving $50 to all 10 Senate candidates, and every month they're giving another $50 to this cause and that cause. And we call it small dollars, but by the end of the year, they've given a couple thousand, and that really adds up.
Right, and this is to an extent just more evidence of what we already know, which is that Hunter Biden was making money like everybody in this ridiculous city does by trading on their influence, or at least the powerful people in the city. I mean, we talked earlier this week about the case of Tom Perez, who is the head of the Obama Department of Labor, who was, very publicly pro-worker, who has now joined a law firm that has an anti-labor track record. So this happens. I mean, when the paycheck is tempting enough, people jump, and they might convince themselves that they're ultimately doing it for the greater good or for their family, but it's rooted in a very intense hypocrisy and a very intense sort of misaligned prioritization of what actually matters to you. But just, be skeptical of, and I know everybody who watches this show is, be skeptical of elites when they're telling you one thing, because they're probably making money doing something else. And now we know there's a federal probe into this firm, Blue Star Strategies, and that could, of course, lead to us learning more and more about Hunter Biden. There is no evidence, as Politico notes, that Hunter Biden himself is a part of this inquiry, this DOJ inquiry. But that said, the more they're looking into and poking into things around this issue of, failure to disclose lobbying through FARA, that's going to create more and more problems for all of the people that were involved in the entire influence operation.
Right. The one benefit for Democrats could be if it gets Republicans fixated on this again, they have a tendency to go down rabbit holes that are extremely interesting to them, to Fox News, to the blog network around them, but that just don't penetrate beyond the 30%. Even if there's some merit here and there to some of the causes, they often take it too far. They go so far in the weeds, and people are like, "What?
What are you talking about?"
And you're talking about Benghazi in 2018, and you're talking about Burisma in 2028. So Democrats, in some ways, are probably hoping for that.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow on Rising, we have another wonderful show planned for you all. Friends of the show, David Sirota and Oren Cass, join us. You won't want to miss it.
We hope you all have an amazing day, and don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you then.
Have a good one, everyone.